Welcome to our introduction to reading the music of the Mass. The music of the Mass is ritual music, and the Constitution on Sacred Liturgy from the Second Vatican Council gives us this in paragraph 34. The rites should be distinguished by a noble simplicity. They should be short, clear, and unencumbered by useless repetitions. They should be within the people's powers of comprehension and normally should not require much explanation. The Roman Missal that came in 1970 as a consequence from those decisions is exactly that, very simple. The music is as simple as can be. It is simpler than Mary Van Trapp was teaching the children in The Sound of Music. Yet, a lot of music ministers cannot read and comprehend this music in the Roman Missal. The Council Fathers did their job. Now it's up to do ours and to learn how to read that music. Solfège is the essential starting point to reading music. Solfège was invented for the very purpose of chanting the liturgy of the church. Through solfège, the singer learns the names and the relationship of the notes that form a melody. Just as a child learns the letters of the alphabet in order to identify vocabulary, a singer can use solfège to properly and consciously sing, starting with the simplest melody. If we sing consciously the simplest melody instead of learning them by rote, then we're building that ability to grow and to learn more and to sing, to read more music. But if we learn by rote, we do not get that ability and we get very limited very fast. So what do we mean by the relationship of the notes? Our human brains recognize easily melodies, and often we can memorize them and sing them. We can recognize melodies and sing them at different pitches, which is the highness or lowness of a specific tone. We recognize the form that is made by the notes in a certain sequence. For example, I had a little melody, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, in what I call the test before this presentation. But we could have sung 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you will still recognize it as the same melody. Another one is Happy birthday to you, is the same melody as Happy birthday to you. Yet, the matter of these notes is different. They are different frequencies. But as human, we do not need to know the frequency or the name of the note to know that those are the same melodies. This introduces us to the distinction between relative pitch and absolute pitch. The absolute pitch is linked to a material world, like a frequency, something that we measure. When the relative pitch is just in relation to another pitch. We have a gift. We can recognize those relative pitch without really much work. This is a gift, a human gift that we have as singers. And solfège builds on that gift to allow us to read music. So what is our plan? This presentation will be twice 10 minutes. And we will go first through the basic music theory to be able to read the exercises, how many lines, what is a punctum, sol, fa, which are two notes that gave the name to solfège, the do clef, the fa clef. And in the second part, in the 10 other minutes, we'll preview more theory that will allow us to grow, like the circle of fifth. Then we will go to the heart of the training, which is the practice of a first round of 18 exercises. These 18 exercises will organize the library of sound we already have, like, happy birthday to you. So we already have those sounds. We need to organize them so that we can pull from those sounds to sing other melodies. This process is called audiation. And that practice of these 18 exercises will be 5 minutes per day for 3 weeks, so you can do a different arrangement. Then we will start reading music while we continue to build our library with harder exercises, and we will be learning more theory. This can last a lifetime, but I suggest 5 to 9 more weeks to really have a good grasp on reading the music of the Mass. Music notation had no lines in the 9th century. They were just words with little signs on the words to say this goes up, this goes down. Then they added a line, then they added 2 lines, and solfège developed when music notation had 4 lines in the 11th century. Still, solfège is still used today. Then notation continued to evolve, adding a double 5-line staff, which at the time was, and still is to emphasize the absolute frequency of notes, the relationship to the material world, like instruments made of wood and metal. So we're going to go back to the 4-line method, which was really 4 singers, and that movable do consists in moving our solfège reading on the 4 lines. We will show later how to move the do and the solfège reading that goes with the do, but also we will be able to read on the 5-line staff. But let's start with 4 lines. The lines are numbered from the bottom up. So the bottom line is line 1 and the top line is line 4. So now on this line we're going to add our do clef. A clef is another name for a key. And that do clef tells us where the note called do is. The publisher of the music will pick a do so that most of the notes of a specific melody can fit on these 4 lines and the space between the lines. An important factor in that decision is called the mode of the melody. The different modes show different relationships between the notes. And the reference note do can move up or down those 4 lines. On the other hand, singers, when they're a cappella, they can pick any note to be their do. Of course, they have to agree if there are several singers together, but they can pick their own do. Some will say do, some others say do, and they pick a do to fit the melody to their vocal range. So in the first example, we have the do on the 4th line. On the second example, we have the do on the 3rd line. That is why we call this method movable do. And we see here that the movable do is the meeting point between the singer and the publisher of the music that puts it on the paper. And this accurately reflects that reading, all of reading, whether it's letters or music, consists of really 2 separate skills. There is a decoding skill and there is a sound producing skill. Our brains reconcile these 2 skills through a process called audiation. Audiation is the ability and the process of hearing the music in your head before you spell it out and you sing it and you pronounce it. So there is this audiation process is very, very important to reading music, like it is for all reading. Now, to learn to sing the music, to read the music of the Mass, only 7 notes really are needed. And those notes are do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. On a piano, you can hear the relationship between these 7 notes. If I play do as the C and D as the re, so we have do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, that's 7, and then we start again. Do. Now we will introduce here a variation on the 7th note to introduce the concept of accidental. Instead of ti, we're going to have te. And so instead of having fa, sol, la, ti, do, we will have fa, sol, la, ti, do. So as the music goes higher or lower, the same patterns of 7 notes repeat. Ti, do, re, mi, and if you go down, do, ti, la, so. Now, this fa, sol, la, ti, do sounds a lot like do, re, mi, fa, so, doesn't it? And then if I start from so, la, ti, do, re, that sounds like the same melody, but just one step higher. So that's where we can see that this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pattern overlaps with the 7 notes that we define as our solfège for liturgical music. So we're going to start with those 5. Now, a definition in chant, the square note is called a punctum, and it is the basic unit for rhythm. Ledger lines. Ledger lines are when the melody does not fit on the 4 lines. Then a ledger line goes through notes that are 2 or 4 grades outside the staff, above or below, thus creating an artificial other lines or 2 artificial other lines and the spaces in between. When the melody requires for the movable do to be on the ledger line above the staff, then the note fa on the 3rd line of the staff is used as the visible reference because we don't want to have our clef or our key outside the staff. So this is how we have a fa clef that needs to look different from the do clef so we know which one it is. And that little graph that I have shows you the difference. The fa and the do are exactly on the same position of the lines, but instead of having the do, that would be the second solution, we have a fa clef. Now this is very important because as we learn to keep our movable do as reference with a clef that is no longer called do, is a big step that will help us later to read many other key signatures, and this is how we will read the 5-line system of notation. In the fa clef, the do is still on the staff, but it is in a space. So that's also how we learn to read the do on the space between lines when instead of having the do on a line. That's really all we need to get started to read our first exercises. We will continue with 10 more minutes of slides to show a little bit what we will get to. End of part 1.